welcome to week 86 of Misha and Diane Watch Santa Barbara. We finished episode 415, which originally aired Monday, March 17th, 1986. Eden burns the letters. I guess now that Cruz has read them, they really are not needed as a prop or anything, really.
No, and we already know that Kirk knows of their existence, so that's not going to be a gotcha moment either.
It's nice not to have the letters sitting in a drawer like Marcello's dynamite on the yacht, because it's nice to have it all, wrapped up. Eden then is seen calling her doctor, wondering how these birth controls could possibly have resulted in her being pregnant. And the doctor pretty much says, well, no point thinking about it now.
Yeah, too late.
Yeah, it's not quite as bad as the doctor Peggy had in the first episode of Mad Men, but still, you kind of want to know if your birth control pills are not going to work for you in the future.
Exactly.
In Ensenada, Cruz meets Rosa's sister, Elena. I assume that's spelled with an H. Father Diego says, oh, it takes at least a month before I can marry you. There's got to be all the checking and the counseling. And Santana's like, I need to get married tonight. And she says, and not for the reason you think. She explains the CC's rule, and he asks if she loves Cruz enough to marry him, and of course she says yes. But then when he asks Cruz the same question, he kind of hems and haws a bit. But somehow whatever Cruz says convinces him that he should marry them tonight.
That actually really surprised me in a way, because at first he was all like, we have to wait a month, it has to be all official. And Cruz basically says he doesn't really love Santana, he'll kind of grow into her, but he does like Brandon and he'll be a good dad. Like, it's really lukewarm. And somehow this is enough for Diego.
His main concern seems to be that Brandon be with his mother.
Yeah.
So, just like Santana.
Yeah.
So, I guess that's a plus. So this wedding, I guess, is going to happen later.
Yeah.
They then have a surprising conversation, Cruz and Santana, which I didn't see coming. They decide that to keep the, Brandon from getting freaked out, they should pretend they're not married and just dating, so that Brandon gets used to the idea of them as a couple before they reveal to him they're married. So I think they think Cece's still going to give Brandon to Santana if she's living on her own in her house.
Yeah, I found that really odd, and I can only assume that really from a practical point of view, means it's going to be something that will play into a future plot point where they're married but no one really knows they're married.
I just think Cece's main point was that Cruz should be, there as a father, also with this secret, plot to have Cruz be unavailable for Eden, but maybe it's sufficient for Cece, but I think he might say, yeah, but in a month or two, let's have Cruz move in, okay?
Well, that's what I was thinking, and we actually had a recent conversation with someone who's getting a divorce, and they were saying that it works so much better with them living in the same house right now for various legal reasons to get their divorce. So it just seems to me that these kind of arrangements really would play a role in the legal aspects of this.
Mary makes Mark breakfast, and she thanks him for last night, for understanding that she didn't really want to have sex with him. Madeline gives Mary her breakfast order. Madeline is really becoming an annoyance to basically everyone she meets. Every time she meets them, Mary's kind of dumbfounded. She's like, you're supposed to get here by 7:30 to have breakfast in the dining room, And I don't think Mary bothers taking Madeline's order.
In fact, I believe she walks away at some point while Madeline is giving the orders.
And then later, Madeline tells Mary to move all her luggage into the guest house. Mary says, it's occupied by my husband and me.
Yeah.
So, Madeline goes off to talk to Cece, but
yeah.
I think Cece probably is as annoyed with Madeline as he is with Raisin. So,
well, and I liked that Mary really made the point that the reason why she and Mark are living in the guest house is because this was a gift from CC, who is the host of Madeline. So,
Yeah, she actually says, your host.
yeah.
I guess the day is over at this point because Mary and Mark are back home in their guest house. Mary says, I'm scared to leave, both of us to leave at the same time in case Madeline takes it over. And then Mary wants to make love to Mark. So I guess after a one-day delay, their honeymoon will go on.
And I'm really interested to see how this marriage progresses, because we know that Janice had massive issues with Mark when they were married, and Janice just seems so sweet and nice. So far Mark is very understanding of Mary and, you know, her past as a nun and taking it slow and that, but I'm just really waiting to see when the worm turns on this and what it is that starts sparking a change in the relationship.
Yeah, I remember.
Oh,
so that's one of the few things I remember about this next year, basically. So we will see fairly soon, if I remember correctly. Or maybe in the May sweeps, 3 more months. Cruz phones Pearl to tell him he's not going to Miami. But he doesn't give Pearl quite enough details, which leads to some issues down the road in this episode. Pearl visits the Capwells to apologize to Courtney, and Madeline threatens to have him thrown out. She says, "Are you friends with the servants?" He says, "Oh, I play polo with Mr. C." Courtney shows up at Buzz's and meets Julia and asks him where Mr. Pearl might be. And Julia takes him to the boathouse where he's finishing up the painting for Cruz. And he's changed the sign to no longer for sale on the boathouse. Beach house, sorry. You got a beach house and a boathouse and a guest house in this episode. And they're all owned by the Capwells. No, one's owned by Cruz. So Julia and Courtney head over there, and after a short time Julia leaves and Courtney apologizes to him for just being a rich lady, I guess, and for her sister being like that. And something I noticed last time that I forgot to mention, she talks, her manner of speech, Courtney's, is a lot like what's her name from Sex and the City speaks on the Gilded Age. Miranda, blanking on her name. Anyway, yeah. So I don't know if there are people in New England in the 1980s who literally still had that speech pattern, that archaic speech pattern, or if they're overdoing it a bit on Santa Barbara. I don't know, but it definitely gives you a sense of exactly what these people are and what they're trying to say about them with the casting.
It projects old money, doesn't it?
Exactly, and Pearl basically has several times indicated this is exactly the kind of person he hated. And he says, I have an aversion when I see someone wearing diamonds,
Yeah.
So, not necessarily because they've wronged him in any way. It just seems to be, just an anti-classism stance, I think, that he has. So, Pearl decides to reverse Pygmalion Courtney. He says, "Oh, hand me that paint roller." And then, "Oh, you're not holding that right." And kind of, Patrick Swayze ghosts her into handling the roller correctly, and then later he's showing her how to roll some paint on there, and I assume by next episode she'll be covered in paint, having painted the house with him, and she'll eventually become a decent person. Although, of the 2 sisters, she seems quite decent.
Even, she's definitely got the best starter material to work with.
And, just in the ranking of Capwells, I prefer her to Eden, I would say.
Yeah.
Kirk catches Gina packing in her motel room. He's either been asleep or pretending to be asleep. And says, "So maybe you should just go to the boathouse right away." And she goes, "Yeah, I'm fine with that, and I'll lock you in." And she's not too fine with that. So anyway, later they separately show up at the Capwell house, so he hasn't locked her in anywhere. Gina talks to Eden, and everything Eden says surprises her, because Eden's like, "Oh, we should let bygones be bygones, and I'm glad Brandon can be with his mother, and you've been very good for him," and all the things that are opposite to what Kirk's been saying. And Gina seems very shocked by this, so it seems like she did buy a lot of what Kirk was feeding her.
Yeah.
But Gina seems really reticent this whole episode to kill Eden, and I think she's keeps looking for ways to get out of it, and also is aware that Kirk said he will shoot her if she doesn't. So I think, you know, I had kind of remembered this storyline a little bit, but I didn't remember that Gina was actually, you know, not fully on board with the plot. Gina tells Kirk that Eden has had quite a turnaround, and Kirk says, "Oh, that's just her two-faced, you know, nature. It's all an act. She just told me she wants a divorce or something. I can't remember what it was." So, yeah, Gina's got a lot going around in her head. Eden tells Kirk that she forgot Madeline was coming and is not in the mood to see her. So she knows Madeline is a lot of work. So this kind of cements the theory that Madeline was Fiona's original name, because previously Eden's been saying, or Madeline's Fiona's new name, because Eden's been saying, "Oh, Fiona's coming," and then she said, "Oh, I forgot Madeline was coming." So there likely isn't a third Capwell sister named Fiona that just changed places with Madeline at the last minute. Eden asks him, "Why did you go to Cruz's beach house last night?" Kirk says, "Oh, I didn't." He goes, "I heard you pounding on the door, calling Cruz and Eden." "Oh, yeah, I did stop by. I had a question about some security issues." I mean, Kirk's totally, like, been nailed here. And it's not even, like, plausible, his denials. And she doesn't even bother putting any energy into combating it, because she's so out of this marriage at this point.
But, you know, I wonder if that's part of the reason we were speculating last time why they even had that scene. And maybe it's to really show how much he really doesn't care anymore.
Eden finds the fake note from Cruz and finds it odd that he would have sent her this type of written note after their parting yesterday. And Gina also, you know, takes that in, that Eden finds the note odd. But then, of course, she ends up talking to Pearl, and Pearl says, "Oh, you know, Cruz didn't leave town. He's changed his mind about moving to Miami." And then Eden goes, "Oh, well, this note makes more sense then. He's still in town, and he wants to meet me at the boathouse." So she heads on over to the boathouse, thinking Cruz will be there. At the boathouse, Gina calls Eden's doctor and finds out that no pregnancy test has been ordered. So Gina's not quite sure about the logic of I guess how they found out Eden's pregnant or something. I'm not quite sure. I was a bit confused by that.
Yeah.
But and then when she finds out there was no pregnancy test, maybe Kirk's story didn't quite make sense. So does Kirk know that Eden's pregnant yet? No, he doesn't know yet.
So I don't know. All I'm thinking is that, you know, you were saying she's very reticent to do this, and she is starting to have some second thoughts about Eden's motives, I think, based on their conversation this afternoon. So I think she was just checking to make sure Eden wasn't with child, because I think if she learned that Eden was with child, she would have another reason to back out of this.
Maybe it's that got put in her head because of that one line Kirk said yesterday in the stairwell about not wanting to raise Cruz's bastard child. Yeah. Maybe that's what got her to thinking, "Oh, is Eden pregnant?"
But as far as we know, Kirk doesn't know yet, and whether that'll change things or not, because I'm sure he will find out one way or the other.
But he is, at the end of the scene, at the end of the episode, in the boathouse with Gina, so it's not like he could find out from CC.
He still doesn't know, as far as we know.
So I think Gina was about to call Eden to warn her, but of course Kirk shows up at that point and grabs the phone from her. And, you know, throughout this whole episode, he's been making her practice with the gun and stuff. And he sets her up behind, you know, where she's going to be hiding. And he says, if Eden doesn't go to the right spot, just make a noise so she comes towards you. And then he goes into a secret area and starts using the microphone to direct, you know, Gina. And Eden arrives. And Gina reluctantly raises her gun. And we see Kirk raising the rifle. So I'm wondering if Kirk is planning to kill Gina either way after
Yeah.
she shoots Eden. But
That's
he's going to
what I
have to
think.
have a very convoluted story as to why he was there with a rifle and just happened to spot someone trying to kill his wife. You know, it seems a bit dodgy. The other possibility is that he's planning to shoot Eden himself anyway and just leave Gina as the fall guy or make Gina think that she did it. I don't know.
I don't know. It's very odd, and I think we've used the word deranged quite a few times in connection with Kirk. He seems to have a lot of strategies, but none of them really make sense to me.
Yeah,
So-
it'll be interesting to what happens in these opening seconds of the thing, unless Eden walks back out of the boathouse and everything gets
Or that bum
put
comes
off.
back and disrupts everything or something like that. Either way, I'm pretty confident that neither Gina nor Eden will be dead at the end of this episode. Not quite sure how Eden's pregnancy will fare if she does get shot or thrown into the water or whatever. But I'm pretty confident all three of our characters are going to remain alive after the end of this episode.
We will see after we watch episode 416 of Santa Barbara.
I want to know what happened with your butler escapades.
I mean, it's just when I get around that Countess chick and her sister, the mouse, it drives me crazy, really. Do you remember Pavlov's dog? He salivated when he heard the bell.
Yeah.
Well, this pup froze at the mouth when he sees diamonds.
Welcome back.
Hello.
10 days ago, we finished episode 416 of Santa Barbara. But we had so much work to do during our 2 weeks vacation in Kelowna that we needed 10 days to recover from that. Plus, we are in the process of cleaning up our apartment to have it rented out. So, we realized we better start doing some podcasts or we're not going to make next Saturday's deadline. So episode 416 originally aired on a Tuesday, March 18th, 1986. And around this time, I still have not gotten a job interview at Expo 86. But my roommates have received their welcome packages, which include some Expo 86 branded rain ponchos. So I'm starting to think, maybe I don't want to work at Expo if rain ponchos are an expected part of the uniform. Because that means rain. Although, I guess Vancouver is known for its rain. So anyway, still hoping to get an interview. Otherwise, I'll have to go back to Kelowna for the summer after my finals in April. On the show, once again, Mark stops kissing Mary in the middle of what she was hoping was going to be a romantic encounter. Mary thinks the problem is that she's a virgin. I think it might be. They decide to go out to eat. It's pretty late, I think, at this time. So anyway, they end up at Buzz's. And they run into Janice there. And Mary makes some comment about how Mark and Janice's sex life was probably much more spontaneous. Back at home, Mark rolls over and pretends to sleep.
I think we're starting to see a really manipulative, passive-aggressive side coming out with Mark because Mary is really worried about, you can almost see she's wondering what set him off and what she can do. And he's not, really giving any hints, but he's not giving in either. So we're starting to, I think, see a little bit of negativity coming into this relationship.
Yeah, I'm not sure how this... I don't really know what's going on in Mark's head, but I'm not sure what's the problem, unless he's got a problem. Maybe you should talk to Lionel about that. Cruz and Santana get married and check into a motel. Santana calls Brandon to say goodnight. That's a short summary of what happened.
Yeah, I mean, I guess all I would say about this is I would actually echo the comment your dad made about this episode, which is that Cruz looks like the most unhappy groom in the world.
One fun thing was that the ceremony was not unexpectedly, but I think uniquely in Spanish. So that was, I thought that was really nice. We've seen enough weddings over the years to figure out what stages they were at as they came back from commercial breaks and continued on. Ted is riding a unicycle around the atrium. This is I guess a talent of Todd McKee's that the production people caught wind of and decided to incorporate into Ted's character, so that was kind of fun. Cece walks in just after he's had a spill. This is quite a long, number of sequences that I've combined down into just a short summary. But Ted has Haley give a go on the unicycle, and Cece walks in again just after Haley falls. He says, "Isn't this where I came in earlier?" So I think Ted and Haley's having a fun, playful friendship so far.
I think so.
I think maybe they'll go out on a date at some point. Eden spots Gina, and they struggle for the gun. They are, of course, in the boathouse, and Gina is supposed to kill Eden. Gina says, "He's going to kill us both." So Eden now knows that something's up. I don't know if she immediately realizes it's Kirk that Gina is talking about. But at least Gina passes off that piece of information before she herself falls into the water. And we don't see her again for the rest of the episode. So could Gina be dead? Kirk finds himself unable to pull the trigger. So I think he still either loves Eden or doesn't want to kill someone, or I don't know, he's second guessing himself here.
This is the second time we've seen this from Kirk, where he sets up a murderous situation and then kind of second guesses it and pulls back from it.
I guess that's why he thought if he gets Gina to do it this time,
yeah,
that won't be a problem. But
so yeah, I don't know. Maybe we'll find out as we go on if this is something to do with conflicted feelings about Eden, what he's doing, if it's cowardice, or if it's maybe something more interesting, maybe it's some even deeper psychological issues. Maybe.
Now, as you recall, we thought Eden might be having a miscarriage. She finds it very difficult to get up, but eventually she does make it to the door. This whole time, Kirk doesn't shoot her. She escapes in her car, but then passes out while driving and gets in a car accident. Gina never resurfaces, so Kirk follows Eden, and he arrives at the accident scene as they're loading Eden into the ambulance. He suddenly remembers the note and searches frantically to try to find if it's in her purse. He does not know what happened to that note. That's going to be very suspicious if someone finds it. Eden calls out for Cruz at one point, either here or at the hospital. I don't remember which. And at the hospital, someone comes along with her coat, and he manages to get them to give it to him, and he starts searching for the note in her pockets. He finds the note just as he overhears Cece telling the doctor that Eden is pregnant. So I think that's probably going to put a hold on Kirk's attempts to kill Eden, now that he, might have a future Capwell heir.
It's possible. I think it will personally be a miscarriage. But
yeah, because I think the important thing is for Kirk to find out that maybe Eden was carrying his baby. He can still have all of the angst of that, even if she now miscarries. So it's interesting how the writers constructed that logic of not letting Kirk know for several days when several other characters did. And I guess that's all to get him into this bizarre position, and it may give him some more interesting psychological issues to know that he almost, that he's responsible for killing his own baby, right?
And this, of course, is starting to tie that Gordian knot we were predicting, which is that Cruz is now stuck with Santana. Eden, if she does miscarry especially, has very few ties left to Kirk. We know she has no emotional ties to him. Now she's also got this little suspicion of what these words from Gina might mean. And of course, she's not going to be able to nap Cruz at this point because now he's taken.
But if she suspects Kirk has tried to kill her, obviously Cruz is the one that she will go to, which probably Santana will catch on to once or twice and be a little bit annoyed with.
Yeah, so lots of interesting stuff to come there, I think.
Mm-hmm. And that is a very short summary. I thought that we might be doing this podcast on the way back to Vancouver, somewhere at an interesting, location, and so I kept it short so that we wouldn't be trying to remember these things while sitting on a rock. But we just were too exhausted to do any more things.
You did have your own adventure, though, last weekend, didn't you?
I may have. What are you referring to?
I'm referring to the Zoom
Oh,
meeting
that's
you had,
right.
Which
yes.
I was not part of, but I think you were on Zoom for about 4 hours.
Yes, that's right. I completely forgot. So Lane Davies Shakespeare Company was doing a fundraiser, and they had on offer a 2-hour Zoom chat with several of the cast of Santa Barbara, and that included Lane Davies and Harley Kozak, Mary, and Nicholas Coster, and Sophia, Judith McConnell, and A. Martinez, Chris Castillo, and Cheryl and Walter, future Elena, who all were on the cruise with us a couple of years ago in 2019, as well as the very welcome addition of Louise Sorel, who had not been able to make the cruise due to her, what turned out to be a disappointingly short Days of Our Lives stint that she was obligated to do, I think. So it was very nice to finally see Louise Sorel and get a chance to chat with her, and was really pleased with that. And they had also teased some 2 surprise guests, so I had been trying to think. I've been trying not to think too hard about it, but I thought, who do I see on that Facebook group? And I see Richard Eden is part of the group, Rick Wallace. I thought, oh, maybe Richard Eden, or I think one of the Santanas is Ava Lazar, I think, is in that group. So I thought maybe it might be her, and it turned out to be Jerome and Bridget Dobson, the creators of Santa Barbara. So that was a real treat to have all my favorites all in this Zoom chat. So you should join the Santa Barbara Facebook groups if you want to be apprised of such future endeavors. And there's, of course, always the possibility of another cruise or similar get-together in the future.
Mm-hmm.
So that's it for our Tuesday episode. We'll be back after we've watched episode 417. We'll see you.
Bye-bye.
Welcome back.
Hello.
This is episode 417 of Misha and Dianne Watch Santa Barbara. We watched the episode that aired Wednesday, March 19th, 1986. We forgot to mention last time that we saw Kristen Meadows on Hill Street Blues. She will be showing up as Victoria Lane later this year. Kelly finds out that none of Nick's books have sold. She tries to keep him from finding out. Dylan pesters Kelly about the sales of Nick's book, and she says they're doing just fine. She tells him to leave them alone. At the end of the day, Nick is happy to hear that he has sold 1 book. So, Dylan seems to be going out of his way to needle Kelly and Nick.
Yes, we see Dylan actually throughout this episode, and he's so dastardly. I'm almost starting to wonder if he's going to get murdered or something.
That's what I was thinking when one of the later things happens. That's what I thought. Kirk asks Cece why didn't he tell him that Eden was pregnant? And he said, well, I thought maybe you'd like to hear it from your wife. Kirk says if he'd known, everything would have been different. And they managed to hem and haw around that for about 2 segments. And finally, Cece gives up on trying to get a straight answer out of Kirk. But he's very annoyed by what Kirk said, of course, because it makes no sense. Meanwhile, the nurse has taken Eden's coat, and the entire trolley with the note on it as well.
Mm-hmm.
And when Kirk asks about it, she says, oh yes, we lock up all the patient's things and give them back when they check out, and you can't do anything about it.
I feel like someone's going to be trying to break into that locker or wherever it is they keep the stuff.
Remember when Brick broke into that room in the hospital, so maybe it's the same room.
Mm-hmm.
Kirk pretends to go to the chapel, but drives away. He sneaks his typewriter out of the Capwell mansion and overhears Haley calling the motel to find Gina. He hides the typewriter in Gina's closet and also hides himself there when Haley turns up calling for Aunt Gina. So now Kirk knows that Gina is Haley's aunt.
Mm-hmm.
And he said to himself, well, even if Gina's dead, they'll find this typewriter and think she wrote the note. Kelly is annoyed that Cece knew Eden was pregnant and didn't tell anyone. The doctor reveals that Eden has lost her baby. So we had kind of thought that might happen.
Mm-hmm.
And that the blood on her clothes was someone else's. So this is a new mystery that's confused everyone.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I mentioned Ted at all in my summary, but he was there too, along with the rest of the people. Sophia reveals that Eden is repeating Cruz's name over and over again. Cece wonders why Eden was driving on the Old Coast Road, and Sophia wants to call Cruz, and Cece insists that he's not the baby's father. Sophia says they should accept Eden's love for Cruz, and Cece says not every woman is capable of passing off her lover's son as her husband's. Kirk returns to the hospital to find out that the baby has died, and then Cece reveals to Kirk that he has had some secret blood tests done, and that the baby was not Cruz's. So hopefully this won't put Kirk over the edge.
Well, I feel like Kirk has actually gone over several edges at this
Maybe
point.
this will bring him back from the edge, realizing, basically this is all his own fault. And he'll become the fine, upstanding citizen that we have come to expect from him in the future. Gina lies in the sand, motionless. Her fingers twitch. Someone finds her. Will it be someone we know, or just a random person like didn't someone find Joe Perkins? No, they found his shirt or his surfboard.
Maybe it'll be those Russians we lost track of.
That's right. They might find Gina on the beach. You must work for us now. Joe Perkins is dead. Pearl and Courtney are playing roulette at Nick's place. Madeline is there too. And Dylan is using his watch to make Pearl lose. Now, Courtney urges him to stop, but he ends up challenging Dylan and loses his last $50, even though he has switched roulette wheels, because apparently all of the roulette wheels are rigged.
Mm-hmm.
Then Dylan fires him for insubordination and fraternizing with the customers. Madeline sneaks out at some point, and Courtney is shocked that she didn't wait for her. So I'm wondering what Madeline's up to. It seems like a weird thing to have included, because she was in one scene and then they were getting ready to leave, and then Madeline's gone off somewhere. So is she working on some secret plan? Maybe Grant Capwell has a plan to take over the casino.
Mm-hmm. Maybe.
So Courtney ends up going to Buzz's with Pearl instead.
And I think everyone's feeling quite sorry for Pearl, because not only does he get fired in this very dismissive way, but, Dylan's criticizing his clothes and, his lifestyle and everything. So it's a very personal.
He says, we're trying to upkeep a certain appearance here. So Brick and Amy discuss that and Dylan's weird personality change of late. And throughout this episode, Dylan is collecting money from the croupiers and dealers, and he tells Brick to let everyone know that he'll be doing the count tonight and have everyone bring the cash to him. Mm-hmm. So they made it sound like it wasn't necessarily standard practice there.
Yeah.
If Kirk weren't so busy, he might notice that was weird, because later we see him paying in cash for a suit. So I suspect that cash might not necessarily have come from his own pocket.
Mm-hmm.
So not only is Dylan cheating his customers, he is also robbing his partners. Kelly, Cece, Lionel, Augusta.
Yeah.
When Brick confronts Dylan about Pearl, Dylan threatens his job too. He says, oh, you've got a wife to support. Amy and Courtney are with Pearl at Buzz's. Pearl finds out that Dylan somehow strong-armed Buzz into firing Pearl from Buzz's as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then Pearl says, I've still got some dough stashed, and I've still got some business with Dylan Hartley. Will someone kill Dylan?
And I feel like if it turns out that Dylan has had anything to do with Nick's misfortune, that'll put Nick in line to do him harm as well.
Mm-hmm.
So
we could have Kelly, Nick, Kelly again for the casino shenanigans, Cece, Lionel, Augusta, maybe even Brick at some point, and Pearl, of course.
Yeah.
Maybe Courtney. She witnessed all this stuff.
Yes.
We don't know anything about her.
Courtney is quite appalled by it all.
Mm-hmm.
So, which I mean, obviously she would be. She seems like a very nice character, but also, she's quite wealthy. A lot is made of them being this sort of old money East Coast branch. So, it's not like his behavior is impressing the kind of people he's aspiring to join on the social ladder either.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So that would be a fun murder mystery. Now it's only March.
Mm-hmm.
May is the sweeps, but maybe he'll get killed off before then, and then May will be the search for the killer, or he'll get killed off at the start of May, and they'll spend all of May trying to solve the whodunit. We will find out.
Of course, we've also predicted the whole casino will go up in flames too. Maybe both things will happen.
Mm-hmm. What if they don't find his body? Someone kills him and sets the casino on fire to cover it.
Mm-hmm.
That was it for the events of the episode. We had credits this time, cast credits, and they were identical to the last one, unless I missed a mystery comma somewhere. So that's it for the episode. And I guess another episode involving Eden where she didn't actually do anything.
Mm-hmm.
She'll probably be waking up tomorrow and calling for Cruz. Well, Gina will decide whether to play dead a little longer and maybe only let Haley in on her secret. And we will see if Kirk has a change of heart over everything based on what's occurred.
And we'll see what happens when Cruz and Santana make their way back to Santa Barbara. And remember, they're keeping their marriage secret.
Mm-hmm.
So that could be a decision that has some interesting ramifications, I think.
I think one thing that might prompt Gina to stay hidden is if the police do find the typewriter in her motel room and suspect her. And of course, Haley can keep her apprised of that. But it might be safer for her to pretend to be dead as long as people think that she is responsible for something.
Yeah.
Especially, actually, if Eden wakes up, she will say it was Gina, right? So.
Well, and I think Eden's going to be thinking quite a bit about what Gina told her and trying to work it out herself. Mm-hmm. And this might be yet another reason for her to try to contact Cruz as well, because even though CC has forbidden Sophia from contacting him or anyone else bringing him in, I think Eden would want to at least discuss this with him.
Mm-hmm. Maybe she'll tell Brandon to tell Santana to tell Cruz to call her, because I'm sure Santana calls Brandon every night. Mm-hmm. Or maybe she'll even get Rosa to help. We will see what happens in the Thursday episode, number 418. We'll see you then.
Bye-bye.
I still got some dough stash, and I still got some business with a Mr. Dylan Hartley.
Welcome back.
Hello.
It's our Thursday show. We watched episode 418, originally aired March 20th, 1986. And we have now watched 20% of Santa Barbara. Gina is carried from the beach. She wakes up in Angel's apartment. Remember, we were not sure if it would be a stranger who picked her up. Well, I couldn't really think of any main characters who it could be. Thought maybe Ted, but this is a bit of a surprise to see Angel back.
Mm-hmm.
And he says she needs to go to the hospital because she's got a bad injury on her leg. But she says, no hospitals, no one can know where I am. So he says he knows someone. And he goes to find Mary at the clinic and then gets diverted to the hospital where he finds her and brings her back. But Gina hears her in the hallway and hides in the closet when they come in. And Angel pretends not to know where Gina is, apologizes to Mary, and then pulls Gina out of the closet and says, all right, I'm going to the police unless you tell me your real name. So she says she's Gina Capwell. And he says, what did you do? And she said, I saved somebody's life, but I made someone else very angry, angry enough to kill me.
And one thing I actually liked about what they did with this is there is one little scene where Angel is busy trying to persuade Mary to go with him to help this person. And I think it's Mason who says something like, oh my God, Mary, you're going to go with this person who just held up the clinic, threatened your life. And I was so glad that they said that because I'd been feeling like we'd forgotten that rather important bit of history with Angel.
Yeah, so it's interesting that they seem to be mixing him now into the main plots. I remember when I looked up Angel when he first came on, I was surprised that he's actually on the show for a while. Not sure how often, but I did notice his final appearance was quite far in the future. And now he's got a storyline with Gina, which could last a while if he hides her out for a while until she feels she's safe from Kirk. So, that could be interesting. Mary wakes up at 6:05 a.m. To find that Mark is missing. And Mark is, in fact, at Buzz's, where he encounters Mason, who I thought maybe had been drunk, sitting there all night. But he had his little office hours sign up, so he's working from Buzz's, I guess, until the casino opens. He has, or, I don't know, this casino was all night the other day. I don't know, maybe he alternates between working at Buzz's and working at Nick's. Eden's accident makes the morning news, and Mason rushes off to the hospital, where Kirk tells him that Eden was pregnant but lost the baby. Sophia offers her condolences to Mason on his failed attempt to marry Santana, and he, tries to say, "Oh, you don't really care about me," but she's like, "Oh, well, I did raise you for a while, and I know how you feel." He tries to blow off, that he's the one who called it off, but she knows better.
I really liked this scene between Sophia and Mason. It was very tender, and we haven't always seen that between them.
I mean, theoretically, he should. Obviously, he hates Sophia for breaking up his parents, but she certainly treated him a lot better than Cece has.
Yeah.
So, Mason offers to take Sophia and Cece to breakfast, but Cece refuses, and Sophia later says he should have gone with Mason. As they chat, they agree they've raised 3 great children together. I had to do a quick count in my head to see if they numbered them correctly. And Sophia says someday they'll have great grandchildren together. Everyone has been at that hospital all night, basically. Mark returns home, and Mark tries to tell Mary that it's quite common for things in the body not to work properly after a major surgery. But she doesn't buy that at all, and she thinks it's his fears. And then she urges him not to miss another doctor's appointment. And we see him later on at the hospital fitting in a meeting with his doctor. But I think he kind of lies to the doctor about his problems a little bit, so I don't think he gets any usable help. When Mary and Mark get to the hospital, Cece immediately ropes him into checking on Eden for him. So, now that he's got them living in his guest house, he thinks he's got 2 more lackeys to just order around, really.
Yeah, and even better, he's now feels he has direct access to a nurse and a doctor.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it kind of fills out his household.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes rich people have people in their orbit that they kind of use in exchange for, letting them be in their orbit. So maybe he just assumes everyone will be happy to do that. Sophia phones Santana, looking for Cruz, of course, and tells her that Eden is in the hospital. Episode 418, Part 2, just in case it froze. Sophia calls Santana to tell her that Eden is in the hospital. And when Cruz comes back from his jog, Santana tells Cruz and says, you can go to Santa Barbara if you need to. And he says, no, there's no need. There's nothing I can do. But by the end of the episode, they end up going back anyway.
Yeah, and I think what was really significant about this, of course, we discussed this before, Santana and Cruz had come to the decision that they would not be telling anyone about their marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the first thing that happens is Santana blurts out to Sophia that she and Cruz are married.
Mm-hmm.
And Sophia doesn't really know how to take this. I think in her head, she really was hoping that Cruz and Eden would get together, and this is going to make that very, very unlikely.
Mm-hmm.
So she's kind of stuttering and stammering a little bit, and just, I think, seems quite taken aback by the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. Cruz does call back at one point before they make the decision to go back, and ends up talking to, I think, Cece and Kirk, or Kirk at least. When Cruz gets to the hospital, Cece tells him that he could have just called, and then Kirk tells Cruz that Eden lost the baby. Now, Kirk at the time was being interviewed by a police officer about Eden's accident and how he came upon it, and Cruz kind of, the cop kind of just offers that Cruz can take over the investigation, and he kind of says no, but almost immediately says yes when he overhears that there was sawdust found on Eden's knees and someone else's blood on her collar. And then he starts questioning Kirk immediately, which really, since Kirk was pretty polite to him, I think on the phone earlier and in the hospital, that it's interesting that he just goes right in on Kirk. Kirk leaves and has been told that Eden probably won't wake up for an hour, so everyone kind of takes a break at this point. But the nurse almost immediately comes, and Cruz is the only one there. She goes, Mrs. Capwell is awake, and she's calling for she wants to go on a cruise. That's what. Goes, oh, no, that's me. I'm Cruz. So nurse immediately lets him in, and Eden wakes up and says, my baby. Now, I don't know if she means Cruz or if she knows she was pregnant. Well, she kind of suspected she might be right, so... So Cruz and Eden are in the hospital alone. They should have some privacy, unless Mark walks in. Mason asks Santana if she's married yet, and he tells her that Eden lost the baby, and suspects she's worried that Cruz might go back to Eden now.
Yeah.
Santana tells Cece that she's married, and he says, okay, you can get the baby. She says that she and Cruz will live apart at first until Brandon gets used to it, and Cece says, that's very considerate. And then, not waiting till all the ink is dry, Santana says, more considerate than you've ever been. Cece says, your gratitude is touching. You got what you wanted. Shouldn't that temper your bitterness? Santana says, I have paid for what I have. So, I guess she's supposed to be hot-tempered Santana, but you'd think when she's so close to having her son, she just wouldn't rock the boat,
Exactly.
But she can, give Cece all the lip she wants for the rest of her life once Santana's in her house, once Brandon's in her house. So, but Cece seems more than happy to give over Brandon. I mean, he certainly doesn't want Gina to have her.
No.
I think he knows he knows he needs a mother. So. I think that was it for this episode, unless I glossed over something else.
The episode ends, of course, with Cruz in Eden's room, and they actually sprang for Marcy Walker to be in this episode at the very, very end, just lying there, basically. So obviously they are literally investing a lot in this ongoing saga of Cruz and Eden, and I think we'll be seeing that build up a lot more in different ways from here on in.
I feel like Kirk will assume Gina's dead like everyone else, and maybe the typewriter stuff will come out, and she'll be posthumously blamed for what happened, but Eden will still have that, Maybe at first Eden won't remember what Gina said to her.
Yeah.
And then someday she'll be in bed with Kirk and suddenly remember or something.
And at this point, I'm, really, she's the only one who knows what Gina said to her. So it'll be interesting to see kind of where that goes. As you say, will it be a situation where she has a bit of amnesia around it for a while? Is it something she'll just end up blurting accidentally to Kurt that'll send him off over another edge? Is it something she'll confide in Cruz?
It might be a good idea for Eden to confide in Mason too. If Kirk's dangerous, the family should really know, and Mason's a powerful member of the family and probably could help do investigations and things like that. So. And that's it for episode 418. We've only got 80% of the show to go. We'll be back with our Friday episode 419. We'll see you then.
Bye-bye.
What is this, a convention?
Welcome back.
Hello.
It's Friday, March 21st, 1986. We've finished another week of Santa Barbara. Kirk is angry to find that Cruz is in with Eden. Cece tells Kirk that if someone did this to Eden, he will hunt them down. Eden tells Cruz that she remembers what happened, but Cruz doesn't want to push her at this time. Cruz does hear her say Gina's name, so that's all he has to go on. She actually talks more with Kirk in this episode than Cruz. Later, the doctor lets Kirk sit in with Eden, but says, whatever you do, don't wake her. So as soon as the doctor's gone, he starts shaking her until she wakes up. And tells her she was pregnant and lost the baby, but assures her they can have many more children.
And doesn't she look enthused about that prospect?
He says she gets wind that he was actually at the scene of the accident. He says, I think my heart just about stopped when I realized your car was involved in that accident. And she wants to know why he was on that road. And I don't think he ever properly answers that question. As Kirk questions her about exactly what she remembers, she tells him about Gina. So she tells him literally everything that happened there, including that she thought it was a note from Cruz, but that it seemed a bit weird. And he tries to push the narrative that Gina acted alone and says he hopes that Gina drowned. Then he urges her not to tell anyone because she might be charged with murder, but he'll protect her. And she has flashbacks to Kirk saying those exact same words regarding the pulling of Cece's plug. She says she thought there might be someone else there, but she didn't see or really hear anyone.
And I think it's notable, as you say, she basically tells Kirk the facts of what happens, but she doesn't actually tell him Gina's words to her.
No, he asked several times, did Gina say anything? Or did you see anyone else? And she says no to all of these. And then when Kirk leaves, she starts to think, it can't be Kirk, can it? So you would think she would tell Cruz, but it doesn't happen in this episode. Meanwhile, Cruz spends the episode trying to track down Gina with various phone calls that do not lead to Gina. Brick shows up to check on Eden, and Cece tells him to get lost. And Brick says he's Eden's half-brother, and tells Cece to at least tell her that he stopped by. So I don't see why Cece would be so against Brick seeing his sister.
Yeah, I was kind of interested in this little scene. I think perhaps it's partly because they wanted to make use of Brick a bit more since they pulled him into the episode, but I think it also does set up, this sort of dynamic between him and Cece, where we see that Brick is more than willing on every occasion to stand up to Cece.
Mm-hmm. And it's, it's good that Brick is now wanting to be involved with his family members, so that's good.
Yeah, I feel like the conversation he had with Sophia a few weeks back, where she said that she cared about all of her children, has maybe been working in the back of his mind a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And, with things kind of going a bit downhill in his relationship with Dylan and the life he's putting together there, maybe he's starting to think more about the importance of his family.
At the Capwell mansion, Mary tells Nick and Kelly that she purchased the last copy of Nick's book, along with some others, it turns out, to help a married couple find their way in the bedroom. She doesn't reveal that to Nick and Kelly, but Mason finds out because when he comes into the room as Nick and Kelly are leaving, he thinks this bag from the bookstore is theirs and starts going through the bag and looking at the items. Mary is embarrassed when she sees Mason going through her shopping bag. When Mary asks Mark how his doctor visit was, he snaps back, "How do you think it was? It was fine." Mark tries to read up on the possible causes for his problem, and the word ibuprofen shows up, and he kind of lays all his hopes on that and throws out his pills. Mary and Mason fantasize about each other during this episode. Mary's actually starts about Mark, but then Mark turns into Mason halfway through her fantasy. At home, Mary sets up a romantic evening for Mark. He seems a little taken aback at first, but he goes along with it, and they start to kiss on the bed, but then he spots the book and freaks out and storms off. Touchy.
Yeah, and it's all through this episode, they're going to go home together, and then he's like, "No, I'm not going to," and, he comes back to the guest house alone and doesn't tell her, and she's there without her key and has to knock on there's just a lot of uncomfortable dynamics between them throughout this episode.
At one point, at the hospital, she thinks they're going home together, and then he suddenly says, "Oh, I'm going to work on a project instead."
Yeah.
Brick tells Kelly that Dylan fired Pearl. Brick tells Dylan that he had questioned the roulette dealer about those complaints that the wheel was not paying out, as a roulette wheel should, statistically, but that the dealer didn't recall the winnings being out of the ordinary. So I wonder if Dylan has maybe put some pressure on this dealer to cover up these anomalies now. I wouldn't be surprised.
And I feel like the fact that we've seen Dylan a few times now taking control of the cash indicates that he realizes if someone as astute as Brick actually looks at this, they'll realize something's off.
Nick and Kelly have a date night at the casino to celebrate his book being sold out in so many stores. Dylan finds it all suspicious and calls around to those bookshops. He then invites a Mr. Bernard Snyder to come to the casino, and as he shows him around, he uses his computer watch to make him win a lot of money at roulette, and then reveals that he knows that Snyder bought all the copies of Kelly's book and wants to know who hired him to do it. He at first claims not to know anything, but then he and Kelly inadvertently make eye contact, which Dylan picks up on, and Dylan says, "I should have known all along it was Kelly Capwell." So I think he did know all along. He was just stringing Mr. Snyder along.
Yeah, just being his usual charming Dylan self. And I'm sure the end game of this, he knows Nick very well. So he knows that Nick will be humiliated and embarrassed, and, his ego will get all pumped up, and he'll be mad at Kelly for doing all this. And that'll definitely be a huge thing in sabotaging Nick's relationship with Kelly. But I think, as usual, he's kind of underestimating Kelly's view of things, and I don't think Kelly's going to go racing into Dylan's arms for doing this, even if Nick does go off in a huff.
Cece congratulates Cruz on his marriage and wonders why he's hanging around the hospital. Cruz tells Cece they're keeping the marriage quiet for Brandon's sake. And when Mason leaves, Cece assumes that he's pining over Santana, because he kind of wanted to avoid, I guess, overhearing that conversation. He says, "My son is the architect of his own unhappiness." Cruz tells Cece that he didn't marry Santana because of Cece. Cece says, "No, it was because of the baby." Now the baby's gone, and you do have a wife. So it's something that Cece says very matter-of-factly, but I still feel there was some gloating behind that. And that is about it for this episode. The other day when we mentioned that Victoria Lane, Kristen Meadows, was on Hill Street Blues, I forgot to mention another Santa Barbara actor was in that same episode. Tim Robbins played a police officer on the last 2 episodes of Hill Street Blues. He, of course, played a young kid on the beach in episode 8, I believe it was. Same episode that Janine Turner was in. And last week's Spotlight was on Janine Turner, and this week's will be on Tim Robbins. So that's it for week 86. So what do we have to look forward to next week? Well, Kirk might let on to Haley that he knows Gina's his aunt. Gina and Angel will probably stay holed up in that suite for, I would think, a while. And just until there's a fallout on the whole note. And I guess I'm sure Eden will tell Cruz first thing Monday that she thinks Kirk is behind it, but you never know.
I think whatever the case, I think Eden and Cruz will have a lot more sort of almost secret meetings about this, because one thing that was really noticeable to me, especially at the end of the episode where we saw Eden talk to Cruz a little bit more, was she was very concerned about Kirk being around. So I feel like we're going to have a lot more secret meetings between those two, which is obviously going to send Kirk farther around the bend, and is probably going to be very discombobulating for Santana as well.
And this week, just like last week, there was another sly bit of foreshadowing slipped into one person's dialogue that you probably did not think was anything special. But in a couple of weeks, we will realize that they had some plans for one of our characters. So I will point that out when the time comes.
Okay.
That's it for week 86. We'll see you in 2 weeks for week 87 of Misha and Dianne Watch Santa Barbara. Bye.
Bye-bye.
I think my heart just about stopped when I realized that your car was involved in that accident.
How are the sales of the book going? Any offers for the paperback rights?